Hello, everyone. In today's video, we're going to talk about a very important topic, which is perimeter server concept, right? Installing B2B integrator. So in that, what we're going to talk about is what is perimeter server and why you need a perimeter server. How do you install perimeter server, followed by the configuration. Then how do you configure the perimeter server configuration with Sterling integrator, right? And then test the connection to ensure that the perimeter server is connected with your Sterling B2B integrator. And then a quick example of outbound data connection from Sterling integrator to your trading partner via perimeter server, and then the opposite way of like a trading partner sending data inbound through perimeter server to Sterling integrator. Now, we know a product called Sterling Secure Proxy. It's kind of similar, but Sterling Secure Proxy has more features and benefits than perimeter server. So before Sterling Secure Proxy, right, there used to be only one option, perimeter server, which acts as a proxy server. So consider it as a remote machine, right, which manages the communication between Sterling integrator and your trading partner. So let's say you have your internet, if you see over here as like cloud kind of picture, and then on the right hand side is basically your trading partners. And then you have your external firewall. Typically in a corporate network, you will have an external firewall, right, which is facing the internet. Then you would have another internal firewall, and then all your internal applications are running within the intranet, which is behind the internal firewall. Now, if you see, there is a zone between the internal firewall and the external firewall. That zone is called demilitarized zone, and then perimeter server is actually installed in a Windows machine and not a Linux and Unix machine in the demilitarized zone, right? That's kind of the architecture, right? Now, moving on, in this slide, I'm going to talk about how do you install perimeter server. So perimeter server, you cannot install it standalone. So you need to ensure that as an admin, right, when you are installing perimeter server, the first step is you need to install Sterling B2B integrator. Now, once you have installed the Sterling B2B integrator, you get this install/packages folder where the Sterling integrator is installed. So you go to that install folder, and then move to packages folder, and you will find a jar file with the version name also appended, ps underscore the version name of that Sterling B2B integrator .jar, right? So you need to make sure that you are actually copying the right jar file specific to your Sterling B2B integrator version, right? And then you need to copy that jar file into the Windows machine in the demilitarized zone. And also you need to make sure that the JVM requirements for installing the perimeter server is exactly the right one on the Windows machine. Once you have had those prerequisites, everything taken care of, you will issue a command called java space minus jar space slash ps underscore the jar file name space minus interactive. And then in this, why I'm giving interactive is it's going to ask you or prompt you for some specific questions, and then you have to answer them. Like you need to answer what is the part of the installation directory where you want to install. So you have to give a path, right, within a C folder, for example, a C drive. And then there is a question that comes, and I'm going to show that in the next slide, like some screenshots around that, whether the perimeter server is in a less secure or a more secure network. So typically, if you have understood the previous diagram, typically the perimeter server is in a less secure zone than Sterling B2B integrator, right? Now, sometimes, okay, we have seen that you have installation of perimeter server on the front end, as well as behind Sterling B2B integrator, and between the downstream application, you might have another perimeter server. So in that case, perimeter server might be in a more secure network than SBI, right? That's the reason you have like this question where it is asking. So you would give less secure network, and then the perimeter server is going to listen for the Sterling B2B integrated connections, right? Once you have provided this basic information, is going to start the installation process. That once the installation process is complete, you need to run a command called install ps.cmd within the command prompt, and then it's going to establish the perimeter server as a Windows service, right? Once it is done, then you need to start the Windows service by issuing a command called start ps service command. Now, if you see in this screenshot, I've given the same example, right? Like all the instructions like Java -jar, C/temp/PS4640. That means the Sterling integrator from which the screenshot is taken is Sterling integrator 464, right? And then it's going to ask those questions, as I mentioned, the installation directory, whether it's in a less secure or a more secure, the port number and everything. And once everything is done, okay, you need to issue the install ps command so that it actually establishes the perimeter server as a Windows service. Now, once the perimeter service, if you see, I've given same screenshots, install ps, it's completed. Now you issue the start ps service command, and it's going to show you this prompt like it's starting successfully and then started successfully, right? That completes the perimeter server installation, but that's not the end of it, right? If you see within the Windows machine, if you go to the Windows services, you would see the perimeter server here, for example, is running at 7,000, port number 7,000, and the status is started, right? Now, after the installation is done, you need to head back to the Sterling Integrator dashboard, and then you need to go to operations on the left-hand menu, and then click on perimeter servers, click add icon, click on that plus add icon because you need to fill the perimeter server configuration because SI or Sterling B2B Integrator is still not aware of the perimeter server that you have installed, right? So you need to fill the specific perimeter server configuration, the host IP address of the Windows machine, the port number, right? And then you can, one quick note, you can have more than one perimeter server, right? Okay, it's in a clustered architecture, you can have more than one perimeter server. I'm just giving example of a single perimeter server. Now, if you see, once you have given all this information, okay, you can save that connection. And if you see over here, the far end configuration, this is the host number, this is the IP address of the Windows machine, the port number, as I mentioned. And rest of them is kind of more of a default. Unless you want to kind of fine tune it, you can go through the perimeter server documentation for any specific like custom configuration that you want to do. But typically, once it is done, you would see that listing uh, in this perimeter server dashboard, right? Now, if you go to operations and then troubleshooter, here you need to click on the show perimeter server status and then disconnect. If you see disconnect, right, indicates that the perimeter server is not yet started, right? And why? Because there is another additional configuration that you need to do to ensure that this is not only enabled, but it also is connected, right? Right now it's not connected. So the third step, right, what you need to do is the perimeter server is kind of acts as a HTTP client, right? And it always have a persistent connection with the Sterling B2B integrator via HTTP server adapter, right? So you need to configure a HTTP server adapter and add the perimeter server to that, right? So now if you go to deployment and then services configuration and then search for HTTP server adapter, edit that HTTP server adapter, and then you need to add the perimeter server name within the perimeter server adapter. Under the drop down, you would see the perimeter server that you have added, and you need to save that configuration, right, to use the perimeter server. Now, once that is done, how you can ensure that the perimeter server and the SI connection is working properly? You can go back to your Windows box, and then you can type this command called netstat space -an grep find 7,000. You would see that perimeter server is running on 7,000 port. And then that means that the perimeter server is able to talk to SI, and the SI is able to talk to the perimeter server using the persistent connection, right? How do you ensure that from a browser standpoint, you can also like, because you have like configured it in the server adapter, so you can type this URL like HTTP, then perimeter server IP address, colon, the HTTP server adapter port, whatever port it was over here, right? 6133, for example, and then slash like qualifier. Qualifier can be a hello qualifier. It should be able to quickly show you, right? Okay, a quick hello message in the dashboard, in the URL, the Internet Explorer or Google Chrome, right? That means that everything is up and running and is connected properly, right? And this is just an example. If you see, right, hello world. And then from a command prompt, how do you want to see, okay, that this, if you see 78 56 34 12, that's the SI IP address, right? Which will be masked just because we are using now a proxy server, which is our perimeter server, using this IP address, so that external trading partner won't be aware that when we are sending an outbound connection to a trading partner, we are sending it from this actual IP of the SI, but rather they will see that they are getting the messages from 12.34 5670 as a perimeter server. So it's kind of like protecting your internal IP addresses from your external trading partner, right? To protect your internal application. That's kind of the intent, right? Now, this is a sample transaction that we're sending from Sterling Integrator to trading partner. This is an AS2 message that we are sending out. And then if you see over here, within the HTTP client log, right, which actually captures all the AS2 related, because AS2 is running on HTTP. So you would be able to capture all the, like if it is on like log level all, you should be able to see the IP addresses, right, the remote port and the destination IP address. Now, if you see the SI host is masked by the PS IP, that means this is the remote host, this is the trading partner host where the data would be sent, right? The remote port on the trading partner side. And then the destination IP address is where, if you see, is the perimeter server IP address. So SI is actually, instead of connecting directly to the trading partner, is actually forwarding the data to perimeter server, and then perimeter server is taking care of sending or the data to the external trading partner, right? So this is kind of a log sample, right, for that scenario. Now, if you go to trading partner viewer, you should be able to see the successful message sent and also like MDN received, right? Now, if you see over here, on the document received inbound by the TP, the trading partner, if they also use some kind of like maybe Sterling Integrator, for here I'm giving an example, they would see the user agent. It's not the IP address of the SI, but it's basically saying PS HTTP client adapter. That means if you are a Sterling guy, you would know this is from coming from a perimeter server HTTP port, okay, and not the IP address, okay, which you won't see it here, which is the Sterling IP address, right? That's kind of like hiding or masking your SI IP address. That's the intent. Now, on the other side, okay, if you see MDN sent outbound to SI, which means that when you're sending the data in AS2 protocol, you typically receive an synchronous or an asynchronous MDN back, right? Now, this is what we are showing you the inbound connection, right, for the same transaction, just to show you that how it works. Now, if you see over here within the log file, okay, you would see that it's coming from the PS IP address. If you see the perimeter server IP address, right, from IP, right? So it doesn't show you the Sterling IP address, but it's rather actually listing the perimeter server IP address, right? And then on the transaction receive side, like from trading partner to SI, like if trading partner is sending data to SI, they would configure on their end, not the SI IP address, because they won't know that and we won't give that, right, to them. Rather, we will give them the perimeter server specific IP address, and they're going to key in that information within their system, whatever B2B application that they're using. And then the perimeter server internally would automatically forward this data to our Sterling integrator. So he's kind of like intelligent enough, right, to understand, okay, this is a data that we need to send it to the Sterling integrator. So it will take care of that, right? Now, if you say this is the HTTP header, right, in that AS2 connection that the trading partner is initiating from their end for an inbound message, and it's the perimeter server IP. So I'm just giving different views of the same inbound connections, right, for your understanding. Yep, this is kind of the same thing. I'm just highlighting. And then if you see, perimeter server is actually forwarding the data to your Sterling integrator. And it uses, it actually invokes the business process called EDI INT parse. And EDI INT parse is basically then internally calls like AS to extract, right? And then HTTP sync send is basically to send the MDN back to the trading partner for the inbound connection, right? So yeah, I think that's all for today. I hope it was helpful to all of you to learn more about perimeter server concept. These are some of the reference documentation that I typically recommend for you to follow through to learn more about Sterling Integrator and what's happening in the community in general. I'll come back with a new video next week. I hope it was helpful. Please feel free to put some comments on what you want to learn more, and I will try to make videos on that. Have a nice weekend.